Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, April 23rd, 2012. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Galloway.
Here.
Lennon.
Here.
Piana.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Mayor Coulter.
Here, yes, thank you. We have a quorum. Our next order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda this evening? I guess I would like to add one only because I see our county commissioner in the audience, and as I like to do, I'll add him to the presentations. We'll have Commissioner Covey as item B under presentations. Any additional changes to the agenda? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I move that we accept the agenda with the addition.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Piana. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council members Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is approved. That brings us to the next item of business, which would be presentations. Our first presentation this evening is from the Downtown Development Authority. I see Chris Hughes coming to the podium. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, everybody watching at home. Chris Hughes with the Ferndale DDA, Communications and Marketing Manager. I just need to fill you in on so much that's happening downtown. If you haven't noticed, April 15th is coming. We've got outdoor cafe season in full swing, so come on down and enjoy the weather while conversing with your neighbors. We also have, for businesses, this Wednesday, our annual FernNet meeting, which is 1 hour quick up-to-date on business and best business practices. This week's session will be about advertising and why to put together a marketing plan, and everybody that comes gets to enter their card for a drawing for a free ad in the Woodward Talk. So come on down. There'll be coffee and donuts. It will be at Pearl Vision at the corner of Woodward and 9. On Thursday night, we have another food truck rally, which ought to be a blast. So come on down for that. That's from 6 to 9 in the, 4 to 9. In the alley adjacent to West Belt Market, and we've been told there'll be lots of seats for people to sit down and eat their food. And the one really exciting thing, not that all those things aren't exciting, but what I'm really most excited to tell everybody about is the new initiative by the Ferndale DDA that came about in a response, further away, thank you, came about in a response to the most asked request on our surveys, which is for more public art. And we are very excited with what's going to be rolling out in downtown Ferndale over this coming spring and summer, but also over the next 2 years as downtown Ferndale becomes known as Art Town, and that's ARTWN. So Art Town is going to have many components to it. It's going to focus on showcasing our creative culture. There will be a 10-piece outdoor sculpture exhibition that will be in place by June 28th in time for everybody that comes to our wonderful Art Town Progressive Party launch on June 28th, which will be a fundraiser for public art that everybody is welcome to attend. And it's going to be a great event. We are going to be identifying art throughout the community and showcasing it. And everything that's art is going to be featured on everything that we do going forward. So we want everybody to get involved. We've made it available that for $100, anybody can be on our A-list, and that will get your name on a sculpture in Schiffer Park, and it might be a great big long list, we hope, really long, with everybody that wants to support public art. So anything you want to know about Art Town will be at the DDA website at downtownferndale.com. If anybody wants to get on that A-list right away, send me an email at info@downtownferndale.com. And call us on the phone at 248-546-1632. And that is our DDA report for this month. Thank you very much.
Chris, thanks a lot. A lot of great stuff going on.
Definitely.
All right. Our second presentation would be our County Commissioner, Mr. Covey.
Thank you, Mayor, for accommodating me. And greetings, as always. Good to see the staff and council members. I have a little bit of good news from the Oakland County Commission report tonight, and that is that we are getting some pretty neat new additions and improvements at one of our parks. You know, there's always been a tendency to have most of the resources in the parks in our county sort of up north, but through a lot of jockeying and lobbying, we've managed to get some extensive improvements. Ground was broken just this past month at Catalpa Oaks Park near Southfield, northwest Southfield. Is going to include vast improvements to soccer fields, softball fields, seating, and all sorts of good work there. The other good news I have is that the 2011 budget came in with a $200 million surplus with the county. I guess that's good, although it's the largest funds balance that they've had in 10 years, and I'm not sure why Mr. Patterson is building up such a huge surplus when times are so lean and people are struggling so much. So that's going to be one of the issues I'm going to be looking at and asking about, because it's much more than 20%, which is standard for a city or a county to hold. So it's good news, but it's also something we should question. On the less positive side, as you probably know, the battle continues with redistricting. This has been a 6-month battle, and while we thought things were all settled, we're not quite done yet. For those who haven't been keeping up completely, we have the Oakland County Commission did vote to reduce the number of county commissioner seats from 25 to 21. And those of us in Ferndale will no longer be in the 25th district. There is no such thing. We are now in County Commission District 18. I did file for re-election. Primary is in August. But I am one of the plaintiffs in a lawsuit. All of the county commissioners on the Democratic side, anyway, have joined in a lawsuit challenging this new map. It ends up breaking up a lot of cities. Ideally, when you do redistricting, you're not supposed to break up cities. You're supposed to try to keep districts compact as opposed to gerrymandered, which would be stretched out in odd shapes. And so the battle continues on that front. One other issue that's coming to the County Commission very soon that's pretty important, and a lot of folks viewing tonight may be interested in that, is a DIA millage, for the Detroit Institute of Arts. Similar to what we did a couple years ago with the Detroit Zoo when it was in deep financial trouble, now the DIA has come before all of the counties in our region, Wayne, Macomb, and Oakland, asking us to form an authority and then putting a millage on the ballot. I'd love to hear from folks, including my esteemed colleagues up at the table, but as well as residents and friends in Ferndale, as to what they believe in terms of this particular issue. I'm keeping an open mind. It's only 0.2 of a mil. The zoo millage a couple years ago that passed overwhelmingly was 1/10 of a mil. And of course, we all know how important the Detroit Institute of Arts is. On the other hand, we also know that people are struggling, and that there's a host of other good causes that could all come forward and ask for millages. So one of the questions that I'm raising is they're very intent on having this millage come before the voters in August. I've, in the past, kind of questioned the idea of holding millages, you know, at times that are different from general elections. We know that a lot more people vote in November. It is the primary, August 7th. So there is a question as to when that millage might go forward, and that vote will be coming up to the County Commission very soon. So I'd love to hear from people. I'm easy to find on Facebook, Craig Covey, or I have several email addresses, and my phone is in the phone book. And finally, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I just want to congratulate the members of the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission. We just finished up Earth Week, a host of very cool events that were very well attended, and it was a pretty neat week. And once again, I think we showed the region that Ferndale cares about its environment. A lot of good activity happened. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. All right, our next item of business would be public hearings. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first, public hearing A, redevelopment of a liquor license for Secret Cigar Vault doing business as Secreto Bar and Bistro for a new Class C and SDM liquor license to be located at 315 to 319 West 9 Mile Road. I would like to open the public hearing Is there anyone from the public that would like to address City Council on this liquor license application this evening?
Sherry A. Wells, 315 West Troy.
Hi, Sherry.
The three of us neighbors that I said last time did not get notices, got them this time. So I double-checked with all of us for that. One of them could not be here tonight, and she asked me to express her concern about the smoke coming out of the pipe and into our neighborhoods, and I could not give her an adequate explanation because I told her I did ask that last time, but I don't understand how that's going to be prevented. She's the one who's got asthma. And one of my concerns was a new one was raised in the parking committee, during the parking committee meeting of the DDA, is that it's been a serious problem, and I want these bars to know ahead of time that they need to instruct their employees not to take up the prime parking, including the residential areas, but the parking lots where the customers need to park closer, or after they circle around twice, they'll leave. And there are businesses that have gone out of business because there has not been adequate, reasonably close parking. We have lots that are not touched that employees could be parking at, and I'd like both of these bars to be aware of that and make sure that they don't add to the problem. And as the DDA points out, every one of those nearby parking spots is possibly $500 in business. And if it's taken by an employee, the employee is cutting his or her own throat.
Thank you. And I would also like to point out for you, Sherry, because you did bring up that there were residents that did not get notified last time, and that's why it is back before council this evening. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Upon investigation, we discovered that we had accidentally used the wrong address in calculating the 300 feet. So appreciate that you bringing that to our attention, and that is why if people think we're replaying this, because we didn't adequately notice all the residents. So is there anyone else who would like to address council this evening on this liquor license? All right, if not, I'll close the public hearing portion, and I would ask council if there's any action on this item this evening. Any questions, any comments?
I just wanted to make a comment. At the last meeting, I did ask about the science of the filter on top of the roof, and I feel like the owner adequately explained that the smoke from inside the building was going to be adequately filtered, and it wasn't pure smoke, cigar smoke being billowed out into the air from the top of the roof. So I think those concerns have been addressed adequately.
Other comments or questions about this item? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor, I move to recommend the Michigan Liquor Control Commission approval of the request from the Secret Cigar Vault LLC for a quota Class C liquor license with Sunday sales permit, dance and entertainment permits, outdoor service area permit on city sidewalk, and an official permit food to be located at 319 West 9 Mile, Ferndale, Michigan, Oakland County, pursuant to Michigan MCL 436.1521A1B. Thank you.
Second.
You have to read it. You have to tell us what you're seconding. I'm just kidding. Just want to do all that again. It's been moved by Lennon and supported by Martin. Are there any other discussions on this item? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. The next public hearing would be a transfer of an escrowed 2011 Class C liquor license with dance permit located at 344 West 9 Mile Road, formerly Via Nova, in Ferndale, Michigan, Oakland County. 2, local K&B LLC, and request for a new entertainment permit. At this time, I would open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address us on this liquor license application? Sherry Wells.
This is downtown night. On this one, I read through all of the very thorough comprehensive business plan that they included on their agenda item, but nothing in that mentioned the dance or entertainment in it. And so I would like to know what kind of music and if they're aware of the unique way that music and vibrations travel in the city of Ferndale. What has
I don't think
happened?
that music and travels any differently in Ferndale than it does anywhere else. But
Well, it's amazing here. When Villanova was there, we had music that was coming through across 9 Mile, across the parking lot alley, to where it was sounded like it was coming from my next door neighbor, and I'm on the south end of West Troy. And that is just one of the ways it travels from there. I don't know that we got vibrations from there, and I hope they're not going to challenge that one by testing it without warning. But yeah, it does travel that way and that far.
thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address us on this liquor license application? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing portion and ask council if there are any questions, concerns, or comments on this item.
Just one comment. I think the sound ordinance adequately addresses any new businesses coming in, and so I think that the health, safety, and welfare of the public is going to be, and the residents is going to be handled adequately as well.
Very good.
I would move that we recommend to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission approval of the request from Local K&B LLC for the transfer of escrowed 2011 Class C liquor license with dance permit located at 344 West 9 Mile, the former Villanova, from 2003 Inc. to Local K&B LLC, and approval of the request for a new entertainment permit.
Support.
Moved by Galloway, supported by Lennon. Are there any other discussions? I would just note that per our packet, the police department has investigated this site and has no objections to this. Correct, Chief? Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Our next agenda item would be call to audience. As folks know, this call to audience is 30 minutes now and more time if needed at the end of the meeting to address any issue that you'd like for 3 minutes. Any issue that's not on the agenda, because I'll give you an opportunity to speak to that when it comes up on the agenda. Please state your name and your address. If you don't want to give that publicly, you can always write it on the back sheet as well.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, City Manager. My name is Matt Nowotzik. I'm a member of the Ferndale Community Foundation, and I'm here to announce and let the citizens of Ferndale know that we have an exciting event coming up on May 12th. It's called Clean the Ferndale Up. It's meant to be a day of activism in Ferndale where, we, the residents, take ownership of our community and try to beautify it in several manners. I think we have 7 organized activities, bringing in the schools, the chamber, the DDA, the city of Ferndale, in which we hope to clean up certain areas that have been identified by various stakeholders. Additionally, I'd like to thank Credit Union One, Royal Services, Allied Printing for their trust and their support. I think we're going to have a very cool event. You can register via the patch because we're trying to get an idea of how many participants. I think right now we're scheduled or anticipating 60 have identified and suggested that they are going to volunteer that day. The day of, we ask that people who are interested in participating come at 8:30 to City Hall from 8:30 to 9. We'll have some goodies, and from there they will get their assignments and hopefully volunteer for 3 hours. On a personal note, as my wife will attest, she makes the joke that she's not a joiner, and that I do the joining for the both of us. So long story short, if residents aren't interested in participating for this event, I think the recommendation would be, get out and beautify your front yard, whether it just be laying down some mulch, whether it just be putting some flowers. You don't have to actually participate in this event to be a member of the event. As one last note, I'd like to thank Michael Larry through the city. I know, he works for you guys and he works for all of us. He's been a tremendous help and a resource, and I know a lot of times some of our civil servants go unrecognized for when they go above and beyond, and I'd like to personally thank Michael in front of all of you in our community for his help. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your work on that as well. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Helena Rose from the FESC. Like Craig said earlier, I just wanted to thank everybody for a really successful Green Week. We had a great turnout, and I think we had a lot of fun too. So I just want to thank the community again for supporting us in Green Week once again. And as part of Green Week, we also wanted to award a local community with our Ferndale Green Business of the Year Award. And this year's business is Green Thumb Garden Center. And we chose them partly because of their work in educating the community with rain barrel education, education on composting, organic gardening workshops, increasing food security, and other volunteering that they've done in educating the community in environmental concerns. They also participate in SACRA and their business's recycling program. And they also take the added step to take their larger items to SACRA personally instead of just throwing them away. And they also, around their own business, they help out by donating plants for city beautification and also donating plants to their neighbors who are lucky enough to be next to them. So if I could get Jonathan and Chris to come up from Green Thumb. Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We're glad to have you. Did you guys want to say anything or do a shout out for you all?
Absolutely. Well, we just feel honored and privileged to be
Step
part
up
of
to the mic,
Ferndale.
yeah, please.
We just feel honored and privileged to be part of Ferndale and to have the conduit to promote sustainability. So, on behalf of the team at Green Thumb, thank you so much for recognizing us for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you much. Appreciate it.
Very welcome. Congratulations. Wonderful. Anyone else like to address council this evening? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Chris Strakowski from 234 West Maplehurst. I represent Michigan Fallen Heroes. We carry posters for soldiers that have fallen from Michigan and from Iraq and Afghanistan. And we're looking for volunteers to help us carry these posters. We need about 250 to 300 people to actually pull this off. We've been doing it for about 4 years now, and we average about 180 people to do this. And actually, we'd like one person per poster, to do this and do it well. And it's about a mile and a half that you walk. And if you don't want to come out and help us in that way, just come out and support us by, showing up at the parade and, being a person and seeing how it's really a touching and moving thing that we do. Thank you very much.
How do people sign up?
Well, we'll have posters and flyers out, and you really don't have to sign up. You can just show up. And at the beginning of May, we'll start having these posters out. So, if you want me to leave some in the back of the...
Yeah, put some back there for me. I'll get some distribution for you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else for call to audience?
Hello,
Hi,
my name is Chris Best. My wife and I are the owners of the Rust Belt Market. Never addressed council before, and I just wanted to say that we really love Ferndale, and we want to say thank you to everybody that's made it very accommodating for us to do business here. And the community, we were going to choose Birmingham, and I'm so glad that we didn't. So yeah, thank you. And everybody from Michael Larry to DDA to the building department has been nothing but helpful in helping us get off the ground. And our 1 year anniversary is coming up, so I would love to invite everybody. May 4th, it's a Friday night event from 6 to 10. We're not usually open on Fridays, as you may be aware, but we're going to have some good music, and it should be a really fun event. So, and also the food truck event, which Chris Hughes already mentioned, this Thursday from 4 to 9. Thank you.
Chris, we're glad you chose Ferndale too. Thank you. All right. Anyone else for call to audience this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are things that City Council views as routine, and we enact them in one motion unless something gets pulled from the consent agenda. So let me read through those very quickly. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular and special meetings held April 9th, 2012. B is the approval to adopt ordinance number 1124 to amend Chapter 9, Fire Prevention and Protection, to add Article 4, Fireworks, as submitted by the Fire Chief. C, approval to renovate the bullet trap in the shooting range and enter into a contract with Monarch Environmental, Inc. in the amount of $4,700 for the demolition and removal of the existing trap, and Action Target, Inc. for the installation of the new bullet trap in the amount of $36,400. Total amount of the project, $41,100 from the Drug Forfeiture Fund, and to increase the drug forfeiture capital budget by the same amount. D, approval to observe Tuesday, May 15th, 2012 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and proclaim the week of May 13th, 2012 as National Police Week. E, approval to start the promotional process for fire department positions. F, approval to utilize EMPCO for the assessment center for the promotional process in the fire department. G, approval of the posting and recruitment for an administrative assistant position as submitted by our HR generalist. H, approval of the contract with cable TV independent contractor Jeffrey Reinhardt and authorization for the mayor to sign that said contract. I, approval of the special event permit for Metro Detroit Street Eats produced by the Rust Belt Market, LLC, and the Michigan Mobile Food Vendors Association to be held in the alley behind Rust Belt Market from 4 to 9 p.m. on the following dates: April 26th, May 17th, June 21st, July 19th, August 23rd, September 20th, October 18th, and October 18th, and that was as submitted by our city event director. And finally, the approval of the bills and payrolls as submitted by the city manager's office, subject to the review of the council finance committee. What is the council's pleasure? Yes, Dan.
Your Honor, I'd like to pull item C.
Item C is being pulled to the regular agenda excuse me. Any other items on the consent agenda that folks would like to pull? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda excluding item C.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there discussion? I guess the only discussion I have is the fire chief I know is here. I don't think this requires a separate vote on this, but could you just briefly explain to the residents maybe what the change in the fireworks ordinance is so people know? Or if you're not prepared to do that tonight, Chief, I thought maybe you were. Huh?
Or I can.
Or Dan, it is a legal issue. Oh, I'm sorry. It is a legal change. Yep, Dan, that would be great.
Your Honor, the state law changed with respect to the regulation of consumer fireworks, and it essentially preempts local units of government from regulating consumer fireworks except in a limited circumstance. And the limitation is as it relates to the ignition or lighting of fireworks except for the day before, the day of, or the day after national holidays. So in discussing the matter with the fire marshal and the fire chief, they indicated that since local municipalities are allowed to preclude consumer fireworks, which are the large fireworks that go up into the air and are not handheld sparklers, that it is, from their perspective, it is an appropriate public safety issue to preclude the ignition of consumer fireworks except for on those 3 dates, which would be the day before, the day of, and the day after national holidays. So that's the proposed ordinance.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I want to clear for our residents. Fire Chief, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the main reason behind it is when the legislators thought of the action, they thought of allowing it to be fired from your property. They weren't thinking that projectiles going into the air on fire have to land somewhere else. And in close areas within a city, it's most likely going to be on your neighbor's roof. So that is the reason. So we can't preclude the part where it's the day before, the day of, or the day after, but we can preclude them any other time because it's definitely going to set things on fire. There's no doubt about that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for the explanation. Any other discussion about the consent agenda? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Council members Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Moving on to the regular agenda, item A, consideration of appointments to the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors. And that one falls, I'll introduce that item because those are mayoral appointments with the approval of council, and I would just like to ask my colleagues approval this evening to appoint the following 4 volunteers to our Downtown Development Authority. Chris Best, who we heard from just a moment ago, for a term ending December 31st, 2015. Mindy Couples, for a term ending December 31st, 2015. Ed Lane, for a partial term ending December 31st, 2012. And Jay McMillan, for a partial term ending December 31st, 2013. Is there questions on this item? First of all.
Good choices, Mayor.
Thank you. Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
I move to confirm the mayor's appointments to the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors as follows: Chris Best and Mindy Couples for terms ending December 31st, 2015, Ed Lane for a partial term ending December 31st, 2012, and Jay McMillan for a partial term ending December 31st, 2013.
Support.
Moved by Piana, supported by Galloway. Are there discussions on this item?
I think these are great candidates.
I concur.
I appreciate it. Me too, which is why I'm recommending it to you, and I want to commend all 4 of these folks. This is the DDA is probably one of the busiest things you can volunteer for in this town. There's a lot of work that goes into keeping our downtown as great as it is, and so these folks, I've spoken with each of them, and they understand the commitment that they're making. They enter it with their eyes wide open, knowing that budgets are tight and work is heavy, but really appreciate. And in fact, some of you are here tonight. If any of you want to come up and introduce yourselves, that's fine. You don't have to. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but sure appreciate all of your willingness to do this. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your willingness to serve us. All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Linden?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. Those appointments are adopted. Again, thank you all for your willingness to serve. Item B, regular agenda item B would be consideration of residential restricted parking zones pilot program. Councilman Martin, are you introducing that item?
Yes, thank you. As most of you know, and we've spoken in the last few meetings, the city, in partnership with the DDA and feedback from residents, have looked at a long-standing complaint on parking on the streets of West Saratoga and West Troy with relation to overflow long-term parking that's not being done by residents. In order to address those complaints, we are proposing a pilot program over the course of the next year for a residential parking program. The action before council today is the ordinance that's required that we pass that allows the city to establish this parking zone.
That's correct. And if I could just a little bit further, Your Honor,
Right?
It would allow for the mechanism for council to not only consider the 2 proposed, as I understand it, 2 proposed parking residential zones for this evening, a possible resolution by council this evening with respect to Troy and Saratoga streets, but would allow for council's consideration in the future through until the sunsetting of this ordinance to consider other streets that either council, the city manager, or citizens, to the extent that they petition city council, that council would be able to consider this type of residential parking zone for other areas of the city if there is deemed to be a need.
Mm-hmm. And through the chair, am I right in summarizing this as the 2-hour parking would be enforced on that street unless you had a residential parking permit, in which case you could park longer? Residents on those streets are not guaranteed a parking spot. However, once they have located and parked in a spot, if they display the residential parking sticker or a badge, then they're not going to be ticketed for staying there beyond 2 hours. Folks who might be coming into the city to visit one of our businesses and choose to park there rather than one of our lots could be ticketed for.
That's correct, and that's identified, and that control with respect to the 2-hour parking is also something that in the future, should a different request from a different segment of the community seek a different time frame to council, council would have discretion with respect to that time frame, again, by resolution. And so really the April 9th, 2012 communication from the city manager to the residents really sets forth the framework of a resolution for council for this evening as it relates to Troy and Saratoga.
And those parking districts could be initiated by the city manager, city council, or 65% or more of the people in the affected area signing a petition requesting it.
Correct, as proposed. And obviously that percentage is a heightened percentage, but that's what the ordinance as drafted proposes.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, this is really just the mechanics to allow us to move forward with the pilot. The pilot that we're proposing includes a pre-survey for residents to complete. We're having a hearing with the residents this Wednesday to discuss the program, as well as an evaluation period afterwards where we can tell if we've actually made a difference with this or not, or if we've helped. This is not by any means a solution to the overall parking situation within the city itself, but it is a step forward in addressing residents' concerns. And it's not the perfect solution, but it's, I think, a good one to help alleviate the congestion in those areas.
Before I ask for a motion, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment specifically on this item? Any residents or others in the public that would like to address this item? I thought there might be. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Luke Forrest, 340 West Troy. I first want to commend the members of council and the city manager for working hard on this. I know this has been a really major issue amongst my neighbors and a lot of other folks in the surrounding neighborhoods, so I want to commend you for moving this ahead. I realize there's going to be a hearing on this Wednesday evening. I'm unfortunately unable to attend, so I just wanted to come and share a couple of thoughts about this. One would be concerned about that I didn't see, at least, possibility of guest permits located within this ordinance or within the pilot program. A quick example from personal experience, we have a shared drive that really can only accommodate one car for our household. Frequently have out-of-town guests who stay for multiple days, and that could potentially be a problem from that regard if you have more than one out-of-town guest. I have personally experienced the guest system in Royal Oak, and actually I used to live in Washington, D.C. They had a similar guest system, and there are a lot of different ways to do it. It seems to be working well in a number of different cities, so I would encourage you all to look into that option, to give folks an option to have control of guest permits and hold them responsible for their use, but still be able to use them for guests over multiple days. The second just comment, and this may not go specifically to the ordinance, but maybe in terms of the pilot implementation for the future. If one of our goals here is to alleviate the concerns about late night noise, which I think, at least from what I've heard from my neighbors, that is one of the concerns. Concern that ending the enforcement at 11 with a 2-hour window in front of that is too early, because theoretically you could park at 9:01 and be good for the night. And my guess is a lot of bar patrons are coming after 9:01, so it's really not going to influence their decision-making at all. So I'm not sure that second comment goes specifically to the ordinance, but I just want to make sure that you consider the ordinance have some provision for guest permits in some factor. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your comments.
Just on that issue, the draft of this ordinance does not, and so there is not a guest permit as set forth in the ordinance. This ordinance does sunset of its own accord on April 30th of 2013, unless further legislative action is undertaken by this council. So there is a sunset period. Obviously, at any point, next council meeting, to the extent that there's an amendment that council wishes to see, could be amended at any time, perhaps to address that issue.
Which I assume, Dan, is the reason for the hearing on Wednesday, to get the sort of input that we could incorporate in the future if that was due.
Absolutely. I think those are two great points that Mr. Forrest brought up. And as well as if we find through this evaluation period that the ending time at 11 o'clock is insufficient and not addressing the congestion concerns, we would be able to come back and amend that as well, which is why we want to take measured steps as we implement this.
I also want to clarify as well that just because the pilot ends April 30th of 2013 doesn't mean we won't actually implement changes prior to that. We're evaluating it as we go. So.
Anyone else from the audience, by the way, that would like to address this issue? Sherry.
A few days ago, I noticed something I've never seen before. It was Councilwoman Piana and Councilman Dan Martin going door to door, and this is not a campaign year for them, going door to door in our neighborhood to make sure that we knew about it to discuss with anybody they found home. And I thought that was, besides being very amazing, it was very nice.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there a motion by council on this item?
I would move that we adopt the ordinance as presented, and including the pilot program for West Saratoga and West Troy.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Galloway. Comments, questions, additional points of interest on this one?
I just wanted to echo again, I think what Mr. Forrest and others have said already is that this has been in the works for 2 years since I've been on council, and it's been difficult for various reasons to get over some humps. And I really appreciate Councilman Dan Martin and the city manager working with the DDA and the parking committee to really dive into the details and come up with a very workable pilot program. So thank you.
I would echo that as well. And Councilman Martin, I know you said yourself, this isn't a total solution, but it is a step forward, and it's, for us, a significant step forward that we've been looking forward to. And so I especially like the part that you have the piece of evaluation, so we can see if we're actually making a difference or not, instead of just throwing something out there. And so great job, great work, and look forward to the results.
Ditto. Good work, Dan.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Mayor Coulter?
Yes, that item is adopted. Thanks. Regular agenda item D, consideration to adopt ordinance numbers 1119, 1120, and 1121, ordinances amending Chapter 7 of the Business Regulations of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances. What? Uh-oh, I skipped one. Slow down, Mayor. Item C would be the consideration of a bid award for parking lot and street resurfacing. And did I see our DPW director? I thought I saw him around, but Scott, you might want to introduce this item for him.
Good evening, Council. Scott Ringler with Giffords Webster Engineers. Before you tonight, and on behalf of Byron, apparently took the night off. We're looking to get an approval of a bid award for the parking lot and street resurfacing projects. The parking lots that will be under construction are the East Breckenridge parking lot, the City Library parking lot, the Felvey parking lot, and the West Troy parking lot, what we call the Mid-Troy parking lot, which is just west of Diablo's. So, bundled with that, we also included in the bid the resurfacing of Pearson from Woodward to just west of Allen, and the Allen Street, West Troy road tapering that we talked about, I think this past December. So. Bids were opened, I believe, on April 12th. We received 6 bids. They ranged in price from $324,000 all the way up to $417,000. So, the low bidder was Al's Asphalt out of Taylor, Michigan. Al's has been in business for over 40 years. They're a reputable contractor, and sure hope we'll get a good job out of them.
Questions of council?
One, this paving is, we delayed that last year, right? And this is now we're getting to it, because if we wait any longer, then we're at a tipping point. We're going to pay out more money to fix really bad parking lots.
Yeah, I mean, the asphalt out there is distressed, and it's in very poor condition.
My question was, you included the Allen Road tapering, which is really going to be a DDA responsibility, correct? But you included it in this bid, just
cost savings, we believe, more production there, and
which is absolutely fine. 52,000. I wasn't able to sort of find the line item where that 52,000 was. Maybe because it's baked into other.
It's baked in. We pulled it out with all the bid items. We included that with all the normal bid items.
If you took that 52,000 out for that project, would they still be the low bidder? would Al's still be the low bidder?
I honestly don't know, Mayor. I never checked that.
It was bid as one project, so I think there would be a deviation from the bid, and I don't think you could do that. It was bid as one project. You can't piecemeal it.
Is there any issue with, I mean, we're not taking the financial liability of that piece on. Is there any problem with having, I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying if you take that piece out, which is what our responsibility is.
On the public bidding, it depends on how the project was bid. And at Byron's point that you can't pull pieces out at this point and accept an amalgamation of bid components is correct. Obviously, council could reject any and all bids. As it relates to the issue of the DDA component, I assume there's an agreement in place between the DDA and the city as it relates to that obligation being DDA, paid for by DDA funds.
Well, I guess the question came up in my mind because if I'm reading this right, the DDA board is not bound by, they will consider awarding that bid. That sounded to me as if they're not bound to use Al's Asphalt Company. And if they, is that not true?
Your Honor, I mean, obviously, I can't say the DDA is going to award the bid. When I said consider, if they're not going to award that, that doesn't mean that we don't go forward with our project.
Right. And so my only question is, if for some reason the DDA decided we don't want to use them and they took that piece out of it, would Al's still be the lowest bidder?
No, it has, whatever the DDA does has no bearing on this.
Not sure that answers my question.
I mean,
is the in the
if they decide not to award a bid, if they decide not to award it,
right,
it will not affect this.
Byron, is the $271,000 in the April 23rd correspondence, is that the low bid with respect to the city portion of the project? That's really the question.
That's what I'm getting at.
Well, we didn't break the unit prices down by that. Because you have another funding unit doesn't, I don't believe, change the fact that this company is the low bid.
Unless the other funding unit doesn't go with them.
No.
Do they have the option to do that?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't hear the question.
I said it doesn't have anything to do with it unless they choose not to use this firm.
I guess my opinion is that if the DDA decides not to go forward, it has no effect on this project.
Well, I think that's a different question than what the mayor is asking, which is,
is it still a low bid?
Is it still a low bid?
Well, we didn't this by unit. We didn't break it out. It's all by units, and those units are assigned based on quantities for each project. So you can't.
But you could subtract that.
You can't subtract that. I mean, we'd have to go back and recalculate everything, and it was bid as one project.
So how? All right. I also wear another hat of being a DDA board member. How will I, as a DDA board member, know whether I should accept this bid with L's or not if I can't break out the costs out of here, so I can't tell how much, whether that was a good deal or not? And I'm not saying it's not. I have no. I accept your recommendation.
The DDA portion was not bid as a separate project. These were all bid as one project. This is a portion of one project.
Then let me just say this. In my packet, it says separately, Al's bid for the Allen Road tapering was $52,911. Where did that figure come from?
From the unit, from what we allocated, from what the bid quantities, what they bid per quantities, and what the engineer figured it would be for that amount of work for that particular portion of the project.
Byron, it's just the unit based on the estimate of the unit quantities involved for that part. So the units for the city portion is what is estimated at.
Yes, because we broke it up into parts and segments.
So to the extent that you just have a smaller overall cost price in the event that DDA does not elect to award the bid.
That's correct.
And the units that are undertaken for the
There's-
city portion are going to be smaller.
Just be smaller.
Yeah, it's not going to
The
change.
overall lowest bid. That's
It's
all.
just an allocation. The engineer allocated what he thought were the unit quantities for each segment of that project, but this was bid as one project. I hope everyone is clear with that. You should have called me beforehand.
I actually sent
That
you an
way,
email this morning
you should have
about
called me
Friday.
before. You have my number.
I sent you an email this morning, but that's okay. Yeah, I wasn't trying to confuse things. I just want to make sure that it read to me as if the DDA could reject that portion of it, and then I just wanted to make sure that we were still low. Any other questions on that? A motion would be in order. I don't think we've had a motion, have we? No, a motion would be in order.
I would move that we adopt the recommended action in the memo attached as agenda item number 8C.
Support.
I guess I'll say supported by Piana. Moved by Galloway, supported by Piana. Any other questions, comments on that item? All right, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That contract is awarded. Thanks. Now, moving on to item D, consideration to adopt ordinances number 1119, 1120, and 1121, ordinances amending Chapter 7 of the Business Regulations of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances. And who's introducing this item?
I can do that, Your Honor.
Thank you.
On March 12th, the council discussed the new vending ordinances and asked the DDA board to submit a recommendation on this date. I know that the DDA's Business Development Committee met, and they invited vendors and other interested parties to that meeting. And from what I understand, it was a very lengthy meeting. They then forwarded recommendations to the board, which met last week, and the city manager, the deputy clerk, and I attended that meeting. Again, there was a very lengthy discussion about the Business Development Committee's recommendations, and the DDA board were in pretty unanimous agreement with the following recommendations as are outlined in my memo. Pretty much everything that's same except reducing the operation to only one day per week. It would be Tuesdays for the mobile vending trucks in the city hall lot, and it would be Thursdays for the mobile car or the sidewalk carts. For the truck vendors, there's a recommendation that from midnight to 3 a.m., those who are already licensed to operate in the city hall lot may also operate any early morning of the week in any loading zone approved by the police chief. Increase in licensing fees and not allowing sandwich board signs for either type of vending. So these are the recommendations of the DDA board. What you have in your packet are the original ordinances as presented to you on March 12th. And the recommended actions really leave it open to you to amend those original ordinances as you will.
Before we have discussion here, is there anyone from the audience who would like to address this issue this evening?
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Hi, my name is Carrie. Vic and I are the new owners of Detroit Underdog, the hot dog cart that was licensed last year. My concern is being open one day a week. I mean, who can support their family working one day a week? Anybody? This is now my living. I love Ferndale. I live here. I've lived here all my life. I've worked here all my life. I've probably waited on many of you. And I am a fan of every restaurant in the city. I'm not trying to steal your business, I promise. You know, if I'm going to go out to eat, I'm going to go out to eat. I'm not going to change my mind because I see a hot dog cart. But I think just being open one day a week for me is not feasible. I can't pay my bills. I can't pay my water bill. I can't pay my rent with that. So that is really a big concern for us. I've invested a lot of time and money to try to open this business. We've talked to many other businesses in the community, and they're really excited to have us. They've invited us to rent space from them on their private property, which, you know, we're really excited about. The community, our children, they're really excited about it. And I think we offer something to the community that's, you know, it's different. It's now coming to the Metro Detroit area. It's very popular in other, you know, if you've ever been to other cities, they have lots of food trucks, food carts. It's a big deal, and it brings something to the community. And I think that Ferndale, in particular, is a great place to bring that feeling to. You know, I think we're a very small-knit community. You know, it's kind of a place where everybody knows everybody. You know, you talk to your neighbors. I still talk to the person I grew up with 3, you know, doors down from me. My father was, and my grandfather worked for the police department for many years. My family still lives here. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the community. I'm trying to bring something that I think that will be very special. And, you know, I just, you know, want to have my business and sell some hot dogs. And I offer any of you to come and have lunch with me. And, you know, thank you. Ms. Piana was just on my porch the other day passing out flyers for the parking ordinance. So, you know, I just, I encourage everybody to take a second look. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Nick, anything to add? Thank you. Yes, please. Come on up.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Barb Single. I own Jack's Tacos with my husband, Jim Mastrangel.
Real boss.
As far as we know, we were one of the first food trucks to settle into Ferndale. We started our business last year, and we operate at the northern limits of the city in the parking lot of Ferndale Auto Radiator near the bagel shop, as you might know. We've had a great year at this location. We've had a lot of fun there. We've had a lot of joy in getting to know the Ferndale community. For us, it turned out to be the perfect place to start our business because the people are just so friendly and fun. They love to be outdoors. And most of our customers actually are locals that filter in from the neighborhoods. They just walk down. They often bring their whole family, babies and strollers and dogs, and they come on bikes. They come up to our taco truck. We sell Mexican food. And we have a good time. People socialize with each other. Some of the customers we have, as we found out from sort of doing an informal poll over the last couple weeks, probably half are just driving up Woodward and are curious and stop by. Some of them have heard about us on the news or, you know, internet, our website, from some of the rallies we've had. So we've had a lot of great feedback from the residents of Ferndale. People seem to really love the food. They love having the truck there. They think it's made the area more lively and fun. And we've established a local clientele that looks forward to having an authentic Mexican lunch on the weekends, which is something can't seem to find very easily in Ferndale. So if Ordinance 1119 is approved as written, our small business, like the others, would be greatly hurt by this, only being forced to operate 1 day a week. We'd be forced to look for another city to operate in on the weekends. And this would really sadden us because we love it here. We've loved being part of your community. We feel that we've brought a unique food experience and a unique social experience to Ferndale. And we also feel we may have the opportunity to promote some of the Ferndale businesses by bringing people into Ferndale that may not have necessarily wanted to or planned to come here but sort of heard about us. So we respectfully ask that you consider making some amendments to the ordinance. We jotted a few down. Number one would just be to distinguish between food and non-food mobile vendors, because it seems like people, they're being all lumped together. Like if someone had a cart selling beads, it would be the same as a food truck. The second one would be the consideration of maybe adding a lunchtime weekend service as an acceptable time for food vendors, as that time is probably least likely to affect the restaurants. It seems most of them would have evening revenue, and also more likely to encourage foot traffic on Woodward, and that's when people like to get out when the sun is shining. The third thing would be considering adding an exception for mobile food vending during the special events, which you mentioned in the ordinance, that it's just not allowed. We assume that you mean we can come by invitation, since we're coming to the
That's
food truck
correct.
rallies.
By invitation of the people doing the event.
Yeah,
not through
the events of the
city.
sponsors or
Absolutely.
the city.
Yes.
There wasn't in there, so we didn't know.
Yep.
And then the fourth thing would be just considering an exception for operation on private property. Right now, we do operate on private property. Mel at the Ferndale Auto Radiator has been nice enough to host us. He seems to really enjoy having us there, and we feel like it might have helped his business too. And we just feel like the people of Ferndale have really enjoyed having food trucks, since you're really the first city around to host food trucks that we know of. And we'd love
On that
being
point, though,
here.
let me just stop, because this does not affect private property, in my understanding, correct?
The ordinance, the current ordinance only addresses public property. The proposed ordinances only address public property.
Only public property.
Okay.
So I probably should have said that to you 5 minutes ago, but
Okay.
since you're on private property, pardon me?
She wrote a good
It was awesome, which is why I kept listening to her, but you're on private property, which means you would not be, correct?
Well, they're still subject to the zoning ordinance.
To zoning, but not subject to the,
They would not be subject to this vending ordinance. Now,
That's correct.
to the extent that there's determination that that's an accessory use at that property, that would be a zoning question as to whether parking issues and whether there's a additional business use at that property. But I'm not prepared to address that this evening.
Okay, so this ordinance only applies to the public property?
public
or-
property.
Okay.
That is correct.
So we're okay to stay at Ferndale Auto Radiator for?
Or any other
Well,
private property.
Or any other private property, which is what I also
That,
wanted to,
that is in accordance with the zoning ordinance.
which, in accordance with the
With-
zoning. But if you
okay.
were in accordance with zoning last year, I'm assuming that would not change this year.
Would we be notified if there was going to be a change of that zoning? So we would, I guess that's why.
I don't think the zoning's going to change. It's a question of whether the use is, there's another use apparently at that property, right?
Yes.
And there's a question of whether an additional use would be allowed. But that's for the Community Development Department to look at, and I'm not sure whether they have yet looked at that issue. And I'm not prepared to give a legal ruling as it relates to that issue this evening.
Through the chair, I do have a question.
Yeah.
What other cities do you take your truck to?
Well, we have a permit to operate on Woodward in Royal Oak, and we currently choose to be in Ferndale because Ferndale is just cooler. I mean, Royal Oak is,
Well, that's a given.
Yes, and when we applied for both permits last year, Ferndale gave us a permit before Royal Oak. We had established the business in Royal Oak, or the business was established in Royal Oak the year previous, but Ferndale responded faster and was more positive. And since we've been here, it's just last week I asked everyone who came to the truck what city they lived in and how they hear about the truck. And over 50% of the people were from Ferndale, and they absolutely loved it. And surprisingly, a lot of the people, even though they lived in Ferndale, they didn't know about the truck. They saw it because we were out on Woodward. The reason we picked Woodward is because of the volume of traffic. If you excluded Woodward and put us on 9 Mile Road, you're going to kill a huge volume of business that is, and understandably, we had people from Brighton, Ypsilanti, White Lake, Hamtramck, and St. Clair Shores, and they were just driving down the road, and they knew about food trucks, but they've never had a food truck experience. So, we were excited, and it's just cool. I mean, we like being there.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address this issue? Welcome again.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to preface this by saying these are just my personal opinions, but I have in my day job had the opportunity to research food truck policy in cities across the state and across the country. So I know this is a really tough issue. This conflict between the brick and mortar businesses and food trucks and food carts is something that cities, big and small across the country, are really struggling with. I'm just concerned as a resident and a customer that we might be going overboard a little bit with the restrictions to make it too confusing for the customer, the potential entrepreneur, and so forth. I think one of the main reasons to do this, to allow these, is to be encouraging of entrepreneurs. And most of them are going to fail, let's be honest about that, in relatively short order. But let's let them fail on the merits of their business, not because we let them only operate one day a week or in very small geographic zones. This is no slight to the DDA. The folks on the DDA board have worked hard on this. I realize, and I know this is a tough issue, and I think they're well-meaning and worked hard on this, but I think some of these restrictions might be a little overkill. I understand the issue of parity between the brick and mortar and what they contribute to the tax base of this city versus the mobile businesses, so I would be fully supportive of raising the rates as high as you think they are needed to be raised to make it more equitable in terms of those mobile businesses contributing their fair share to the city. But I think doing that and simplifying it would be a better solution than having this sort of myriad of different days and geographic zones. So I also would support, keeping them a reasonable distance from the front door of a brick and mortar business and a residence. I think that's perfectly logical restriction. But I'm opposed to just again, as a resident and a customer and someone who wants to see Ferndale continue to be cool and encourage these entrepreneurs, I think we do well to step back from some of the geographic and the day restrictions. I think it's confusing and overly complicated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sherry Wells, a next to downtown resident. I've mentioned this one before. We have already a lot of noise for all the people who are smoking cigarettes outside of Rosie's in the evenings. And I just asked the police chief, and he said the decibel meter should register noise of whatever kind or source, so I may have them see how many decibels of yelling and screaming crowd noise we have from the people smoking out there. On the one hand, I like the idea of, since the bar's kitchen closes at midnight and these people are still drinking for another couple hours, that they have an opportunity to put food in their stomach before they get into their cars. It's safer for everyone. I'm just simply concerned about the noise, and if they're doing the eating there rather than having the more trash littering our residential streets. I know that Rosie's has no objection to them being there at midnight to 3 a.m., but the loading zone is even closer to our residences than where everybody smokes the cigarettes. And there is the apartment building next door, and I have been contacted by one of the residents, long-term residents there, a number of times regarding noise. And the fence that was put up there behind that apartment building was because of some of the litter and other misbehavior that grounds was subjected to. So this is one other issue that hasn't been yet discussed.
Anyone else on this issue? Chris?
Real quick, I'm going to keep this short, because I just had a question for Mr. Christ. Because of the Rust Belt's unique situation with the private property in the back alley, I'm just contemplating this. I'm not saying I'm going to do it. A farmer's market, a very well-executed farmer's market in the back. Ferndale doesn't have a farmer's market currently. I mean, I think they do in I'm sure what building that is. It was attempted at least at one point. But I'm contemplating that. Would there be anything in the zoning that would prohibit me from doing a farmer's market in the private property in the alley behind the building?
In the alley?
The alley, there's a mulch area right there that is private property, not in the actual drivable alley portion that would be city property. I'm talking about private property.
there's restrictions on outdoor sales. So, I'm not prepared to answer your question completely.
It's a
I'm
topic from this
okay.
ordinance, I think.
I'm sorry, I just thought I'd just take this opportunity with the,
Restrictions on
loading zone cutout, it's owned by the city.
Yes, so he wouldn't be able to utilize that.
I know what you're talking, it's a loading zone cutout you're talking about. That's city property, right behind the Rust Belt? That's city property.
no, there is about an 8-foot portion of public.
Right,
But what-
the sidewalk goes.
It's okay, it's not the appropriate time, sorry about that.
No, that's okay, yep. Anyone else who would like to address us on this ordinance?
I just got a couple of questions, Mayor.
All right, sure.
Madam Clerk, if I'm reading this right, on ordinance 1119, the fee to operate is going to be $650, correct?
That is the recommendation from the DDA.
With a $50 renewal fee. That's a lot of hot dogs. And they can only operate on Tuesdays in this parking lot here at City Hall.
That's correct. These are the trucks.
For the
We're
truck.
talking about
For the
mobile
trucks, right.
trucks.
Now, for ordinance 1120,
Those are the sidewalk carts.
okay, that's $350 application fee. With Thursdays next to the Rust Belt in the alley there only.
Not next to the Rust Belt, it's
Oh, the other alley.
the pedestrian
Yeah.
alley next to
Right.
the old American Pub.
Okay. Right now, that's the only questions I have. I'm not.
Yeah. Any other questions of council?
I just want to make some comments. From the original to now, we went from 7 days a week down to 1 day. So I kind of concur that's a little bit of restrictive. And so I find that a little unbalanced from what we originally talked about and what's there now. And then, to build on what Councilman Lennon said, the original licensing was $100 total, and now it's $650. So we've had a $550 increase in the permits. Granted, the DDA board acknowledges when they first reviewed the ordinance that the fees were not discussed. So this is clarification that we've asked them to produce at the last meeting. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I had a question about the special events. In the summary and background notes provided by the city clerk, bullet point number 2, it says no mobile vending during special events.
Again, to clarify, that means the license they hold from the city is not valid during special events. If
Okay.
they want to vend during special
Thank you.
events,
Thank
they
you.
must be an official vendor of the organizer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I guess I just have, perhaps it's a rhetorical question, but just very basic. I mean, why do we want food trucks and food vendors in the city at all? I mean, if we want to develop a new business, a niche that draws people in, I think this current, or the proposals from the DDA don't do a very good job of accomplishing that. If we want to have them in to create another weekly event, like Thursdays on the 9 or what have you, then it seems to me that this may address that goal. But my thought was that our objective was the former, to create new businesses, new excitement on a regular basis. And I just don't see how these DDA proposals achieve that goal.
I agree wholeheartedly with Scott and Melanie. This would run these people right out of business. And let me ask you this: the licensing, the fees, do they go into the general fund, or do they? Where do they go? The money?
Yeah, those are general fund revenues. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well.
Let me ask a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, if you want, just a minute.
Let me just ask a question about the rationale behind no sandwich board signs allowed, which feels like yet another restriction on their advertising, I guess. But what was, and I don't mean to ask you that if you're not prepared to
It
answer
came
that.
from the DDA, and if I remember correctly, it's concern for overloading the congestion on the sidewalks, because we're already going to be very close to making clearances.
Oh,
yes. Definitely. In terms of clearance, a sandwich board sign is usually 3 feet wide. And you then have maybe a 5-foot sidewalk in some locations, depending on where you're at, as well as then you have businesses that already have sandwich board signs that they have already typically applied for as well. So thinking of either the push cart as a kind of a moving sandwich board sign in itself, it can be contained within the cart itself. And as well as your mobile trucks. Your mobile trucks have excessive signage usually on them compared to even our businesses. So they are actually getting more signage than most of our businesses ever would. And to address...
But on that point, though, help me just understand. But don't the vendor carts have to be in that alley? So they're not on the sidewalk, are they?
Yeah, they are on a sidewalk. That pedestrian alley is a sidewalk that cuts through from 9 Mile to Troy Street.
But not on the 9 Mile sidewalk. Okay.
Not on the 9 Mile sidewalk. And one of the reasons...
It has to maintain ADA clearances, and if there's propane in use, then there are additional clearances required by the fire marshal.
Correct. And one of the reasons why we moved away from really being in front of businesses or near businesses is some of those competing issues of what type of business would that be. And unfortunately, the city clerk's office also had to deal with getting the property owner's letter of approval for that vendor to be out in front. And quite honestly, there are times when some of our property owners don't always see clearly on why they're approving something. They could be approving a coffee shop to be right in front of a coffee shop, and they might not even know it. And it's just not thinking always about their tenant. To talk about the fees a little bit, though, if I may, just looking at what a typical business pays for being on 9 Mile or on Woodward, typically $10 to $12 a square foot on 9 Mile for the year. On Woodward, up to $14 a square foot, sometimes $16 a square foot. When you look at the typical space that a mobile truck would take up, it's 9 by 20, which is 180 square feet. If you would take that times the typical square footage on 9 Mile, that would be $1,800 a year. If you looked at push carts, maybe about a 5 by 10 space, given the clearance and so forth, 50 square feet, that would be $500 a year. The other thing that we looked at in terms of the fees and the previous fee structures is that there were flat fees, but then there was also costs for taking up a parking space. So we tried to roll it all together as opposed to itemizing them all out.
So, but when you're talking, just so I'm clear, when you're talking about the comparison to a brick and mortar, are you talking about their rent? That's
their rent.
Right.
And this is what they're doing. They're renting a space from the city to be in public space. And that does not take in account their triple net lease, which is the taxes that they pay to the city as well. So if you were to look at that based on say if they were out there for 52 weeks of the year, 1 day a week, that would be for a mobile truck, that would be $10.57 a day. For a push cart, if they were out there for 52 weeks, and granted we know that it's Michigan and they're probably not going to be out there for 52 weeks in their push cart, so if you took it to 36 weeks, it would be $6.94 a day. Regarding, in terms of the days of the week, I know that it was originally submitted to you for every single day of the week, but when the DDA Business Development Committee was reviewing this, their recommendation was always for 1 day per week. And we really looked at the days versus parking issues going on within the city, as well as other things that we're trying to do and trying to encourage our third Thursdays, obviously, and growing our Thursday business. But I think that for the mobile trucks for a Tuesday, we were going to look at a Thursday, but we're really, when you start thinking about our parking issues that we have already, we did not want to compound that. And I think pulling in here tonight, Monday night, kind of shows you even, because pulling in, I couldn't find a parking space out there either. So the sandwich board signs, I know we had already addressed that, but one of the things that our board did add at their board meeting was those additional hours from 12 a.m. until 3 a.m. in a loading zone as approved by the city or the chief of police, which was above and beyond of what our business development committee had originally recommended. And then as for the spacing in the alley for the push carts, looking at those as that Thursday component to really kind of build and grow our Thursdays even more seemed to work well. And also knowing that there are going to be monthly food truck rallies now, as you've approved them, as well as I believe there is yet another group that is coming in for another food truck rally on different day every other month. So knowing those two things are coming down the pipe, the board really felt that for this year, let's work with this and see what happens from it. Kind of like a pilot program as well, to see if this will work, because otherwise we're talking about potentially, in some cases, at least 3 days a week, given any of the special events that might be going on.
Thank you. All right, other questions or comments from council?
Yes, through the chair.
Yeah.
How come you didn't select Mondays when a lot of restaurants are closed during lunches?
During lunches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I don't think the board really, considering our restaurant owners, they're struggling for lunches. That was really a lot of the concern with lunch times. So Mondays, right now, I think in terms of when we look at the overall day as a Monday, not just the lunchtime hour, and they didn't want it to get too confusing as to, oh, this time during lunch and this time during dinner on this day and that day, just to pick a single day, is that Monday nights, we know that, especially on the east side, is a very strong Monday night with Woodward Avenue Brewers offering half-off foods, and basically what that has done is compounded for all of our businesses along this area to be very busy, because once they get into Woodward Avenue Brewers and they see that they can't get a table, they're on to another business typically. I didn't, this was not in the packet, but we did look at some pricing and what other cities were doing all across the state, or excuse me, all across the United States. Looking at varying weeks and days and hours and locations, and it is all across the board. So it really is up to a local perspective as to what's going to work for your community. And I think that as a DDA, in terms of protecting our businesses, but yet still making sure that there is life and vitality by adding in the mobile trucks and the push carts, this was what they felt comfortable in recommending.
Other questions or comments of council on this item? Yes, sir.
Hi, Dean Bach, owner of Dino's. I got a question concerning the private and city property issue. I have a lease agreement with the city for my patio out in front. Does that now become private property? Am I able to sublease that, or is that still considered city property?
You have a license.
It's a license. All right. I just wanted to clarify. I heard grumblings out here. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's all right. We've got a lot of information on this. We studied this issue for an awful long time. What is the pleasure of council?
Well, again, I just get back to my initial thoughts. And do we consider this a new business opportunity for the city, or is it, as I think the DDA looks at it, or it sounds like to me, a way to somehow marginally enhance the downtown and add to its vitality, or is it a whole new sort of group of businesses that we want to attract to the city? You know, I think if it's some way to enhance the bricks and mortar, if our goal here is to help them out, then I think the idea of bringing, food trucks and push carts into town 1 or 2 days a week would suggest to me that we almost give these spots away, because I don't think anybody's going to come in for 1 day a week at the fees that we have with the limitations that we have on them. If we want to encourage a new group of businesses to come in and become known as a place for food trucks and push carts, then I think more than 1 day a week is going to be necessary.
I personally, I'm sorry, if the chair. I'm personally not opposed to restricting the days that the carts and the trucks can be here. That piece seemed somewhat reasonable to me. Now, whether this is the final solution and this can be tweaked a little more to be more favorably oriented towards businesses, I'm totally open to that. The fees, however, seem restrictively high to me. I appreciate Christina's explanation, because that was the question I was going to ask, is how you came up with the fees. And I appreciate the work the DDA did on this recommendation, but I think the answer is both. We have to work with the bricks and mortar restaurants that we've got, but also cultivate new business opportunities and ventures, and the fees just feel restrictive to me.
I guess I share that sentiment. This is a very restrictive ordinance from the perspective of a hot dog vendor. I get that. Much more restrictive, at least, than what we did last year. And on top of that, we're significantly increasing the fees, which feels like an additional restriction on them. And I do fear that if we pass this as written, we're just not going to have anybody apply. Now, granted, if you go on private property, that's another matter, and I know I heard Carrie and Nick talk about they've had invitations from private property owners, and maybe that's ultimately the solution, except that then we lose all control about where they are and when they are. And so to the extent that we want to have some say in how this works, we probably should state that here. So I'm concerned about the 1 day a week. I feel that's very restrictive. I don't know what the will of council is. My fear is that in a month we'll have nobody applying, and we'll have a nice alley that nobody wants to participate in. But at the very least, I'm concerned about the fees, and I would be in favor of reducing those.
I think we're close, and I don't want to throw the work that the DDA did out by any means. But would it be appropriate if 1 or 2 members of council sat down with representatives of the DDA and maybe worked a compromise agreement that feels a little more comfortable? I don't want to kick the can down again, but,
Possibly, but let's see if we can hash something out this evening.
Sure.
If we can't get there, I'm right with you, Councilman, but I think we are close. I think this is a great amount of work by the DDA. I just think it's a balance that we have to strike, and we have to figure out if we've gone a little too far, and that's kind of up to us. Yes, Councilwoman Piana.
Well, I appreciate what Executive Director Christina Shepherd-Decius said, in that maybe we should take a look at this as a pilot, because we are trying to accommodate new businesses. And if that's the case, then we should probably model this ordinance and program off of the parking restricted zones and have some sort of follow-up survey and type of reporting out, if you think that's the same approach that we should take here. But I do agree. I do agree that the fees are restrictive, and I do appreciate Christina's rationale for explaining the square footage and how they came up with the vending prices. But I think I have a different take on that. The bricks and mortar are not the same equal comparison to a hot dog vendor, cart vendor, and a truck vendor. So therefore, it would seem appropriate to lower the cost because of they're not a direct one-to-one comparison.
I mean, one thought that I would have is that, we scale back the hours, that we allow Monday through Friday, scale back the hours to avoid the dinner crowd and allow them to open up after midnight. if they want to come back after midnight, and they're mobile.
I mean, have them stop at a certain point.
Have them stop at 6 o'clock so that they're not, I mean, if, I think.
Well,
there's always
that's a
market
good
for it.
concept. I kind of agree with that. I mean, during the business hours between 6 and midnight, when we expect our restaurants to be full. And after that, I mean, that would be a bad idea for them to come back. And I would like these, I have to agree with Melanie on slashing these fees.
My only concern is during certain days of the week, the lunch crowd is somewhat anemic. And if we open it up all 7 days for lunch, I don't know where the brunt of that burden gets. You know, if the permanent restaurants are, you know, unduly harmed in that. What would happen if we kept the restrictive days as proposed, but kept the current fees as they exist today? Is there support for that?
The way I envisioned this was sort of a new group of businesses coming to town, and I think 1 day a week, and who's going to promote them? I would think that if it's 1 day a week, no one's going to know about them, and they'll all fail. Unless somebody's out there promoting them, which it seems that the DDA may not be inclined to do, and it's probably not their task to do, but. Or maybe we just pass on it. Maybe we just outlaw it all together in Ferndale and say you have to put it on private property. And then let people fend for themselves and let the market take care of it.
I'm not in favor of that, by the way.
So basically, to sum it up where we are at, do we increase the number of days, and how much do we lower the cost of the fees?
Yes.
And what I've heard is all 7 days, right? 5?
Maybe 5 days.
Maybe,
on
okay.
public property.
And then a percentage and reduction of the fees that we need to come to an agreement on, that we would feel comfortable trying.
I guess I'll say
That's
this. My
kinda
issue
where I'm
with 5 days is, it was never my assumption that they would even, I know Carrie and Nick were here and talked about making a living at this, that they would necessarily make their living 100% in Ferndale, that there are other communities on other days of the week that you would go to, that there are other events that you would go to. I don't think a hot dog vendor could make a living just on the hours of just doing Ferndale. So I don't need to go to 5 days a week, I don't think.
Well, let me remind you, the DDA did say that we do have special events coming.
That's right.
That would cover
Correct.
quite a few of those days,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Already. But that's through a different avenue, and that's through the special events process, not the public ordinance as detailed here.
Well, the other thing is, we're going to find out pretty quickly if vendors don't think this is worth their time and effort, right? Because we're going to be sitting here in June, and nobody's going to have applied for our alley on Thursday, and we're going to go, uh-oh. So I'm actually, with lower fees, I'm actually willing to say, all right, let's try this, and we're going to know pretty quickly if people thought it was worth their while or not.
Well, and I agree with the program evaluation approach. Let's do pre-measurements, post-measurements, and see if we make a difference and an impact on the.
Well, what's the baseline? Right now, it's 0.
We'll talk about it, yeah.
Right? I mean, so anything from, we can have 100% participation if one hot dog truck gets out. I mean, just looking at.
Well, you know what? No, we've had a few hot dog vendors already. That's why they're here, because they were out there, and now we're restricting how many days that they can operate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the sample size is big enough to draw any real conclusions if we have baseline of 1 or 2.
Well, this is about us taking a risk as well and starting something new and fostering and nurturing it in the best way possible.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, just looking at, say, Portland, Oregon's thing, there's 4 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 3, 11 to 6.
But their downtown footprint is like 100 times larger than ours.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's something. What other cities do this that we can turn to?
Well, it was in the DDA packet, the comparison. So, and also we got something in our email from the city clerk saying that Berkeley has 90-day license at 20-person or $40 a truck, plus annual 25 business license. So 80-person a year and 160 a truck per year. And Birmingham is 50. Yearly fee option for Birmingham is 1,825. So, and then Lansing is monthly fees of 200. And the vendors may operate either dawn to 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. So, and the DDA also said that the pricing that they put forth was average cost for vendor licenses, so take that into consideration.
One other comment I wanted to make is that if you were to go into a shopping mall and have a little cart in the mall, it's a couple $100 a month easily. And I think that when you look at some of these other things that I passed around, they are all across the board, and it does depend on how many days per week and so forth. So, and when you're talking about events, many of these vendors are paying, well, for like the food truck rally itself, they're paying $100 to be at one single event, to things like the Funky Ferndale Art Show and DIY. You're talking anywhere from, $250, $350 on up for large special events for one weekend within a year. Now, granted, we might not have 10,000 people out on one day, but over a course of an entire year, you definitely are.
Very briefly, yep.
Yeah, for the fee for the truck at $550, that's completely reasonable. At the Pride Festival, my truck, I had to pay $375 for that day. So you'll never hear someone say more is better, but there's no problem with this price at $550 for a large truck like mine.
Thanks. Thank you. All right. Is there a consensus of council? Do we want to move forward with this item this evening?
Well, I would certainly like to get this thing resolved, because it seems like every meeting we got this on the agenda. This has been going on for 2 years. I'm in favor of reducing fees and then upping the hours a little bit, or the days of the week a little bit.
Do you have a suggestion on the fee amount?
Well, I'd like to see them reduced at least maybe 20, 25%. But I want to make sure our staff, the time our city clerk's office staff puts into this is adequately compensated. So, I mean, I will leave that up to Cheryl Lynn.
Well, the $100 application fee is standard across.
Well, yeah,
so
that's what stands
covers
alone.
costs. Exactly. So we're really talking about the annual license fee.
Well, again, I mean, I think it's all a function of, if you're allowed to operate 52 days a year, or whether you're allowed to, 2 days a week, 104 days a year. I mean, I think that would factor into my thoughts on what an appropriate license fee is.
The current license fee is?
Currently, it's a $50 application fee, non-refundable, and a $50 license fee.
For $100 total.
Correct. Keep in mind, too, that we're asking you to set fees by resolution of council, not to include them in the ordinance. The ordinance simply states that the fees will be set.
Right.
So that would be the next item on the agenda.
Is
So
that-
it's
okay.
still coming.
Good
It
point.
just doesn't have to be part
Good
of
point.
the ordinance.
Good point.
Oh, okay.
I guess another thought is that I think we don't have to treat the push carts and the trucks the same way. I'd be open to more or less restrictive rules on the push carts. I just don't see somebody selling a hot dog out of a stand as competing with House Bayou. I just don't see that at all. A food truck, I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit different.
One more little thing to throw in there, sorry. Just to keep in mind with the push carts, and this definitely kind of swayed our opinion of our board as to how they saw it, is it could be more than just food. It could be any type of product. It could be candles, it could be beads, it could be clothing, it could be, picture frames. I mean, it could be anything. So that changed a lot of our board members' opinions as to how they were looking at that in terms of the number of days of the week and the fees and so forth, too.
Well, what's to stop us from restricting this ordinance just for food vendors, right? I mean,
Nothing.
Yeah.
We could do it.
Yes.
We could do it.
Mike.
And Dan, that was our question, because there was a good consensus on the food trucks, and there was a lot of debate about the hot dog vendors. And we asked, can we separate these two things? Because a lot of us thought it wasn't a good deal for the hot dog guy, but it was explained to us it's not, as Christine said, it's not just the hot dog guy. It's the retailers. So if there's a way to split that going forward.
It's a commercial activity. I mean, arguably, you could go back and craft a argument as to why there should be a distinction between some retail establishments and some other retail food establishments. But right now, in the ordinance, it's not. It's not distinguished, and there's not rules setting forth a rationale why they should be distinguished right now.
So there's no distinguishing them, so you literally can have somebody out there in an old grocery shopping cart with brooms and clothes hanging from it, adopted as it is right now, right?
I doubt we would approve that.
But what I'm saying is theoretically this could happen, and that's not what we're trying to portray here.
I guess if they paid the fee, yeah.
I would very much be in favor of splitting it. Splitting the ordinance between food versus non-food.
If that addresses the business's concerns, I would be supportive of splitting it as well.
Yeah.
In order to help the sidewalk.
Find resolution.
What's that?
Find resolution.
Help the, good compromise, help the sidewalk vendors be able to flourish.
So I'm going to suggest, because there's several areas of still question or concern, I guess, in my mind. One is the fees, and I'm getting a sense that we don't like as high as they've gone, although we're not sure where they should be. Number two, can we separate food from non-food vendors, especially in the carts? And then three, is there a way to add some hours to this that is not overly onerous on our brick and mortar? So at the risk of putting this off for another 2 weeks, I think those are three very substantive and legitimate areas of concern that we could probably wrap up in 2 weeks, if that is the thought of council.
I agree.
I agree.
Well, I agree, but I just want to provide some direction from up here as we go forward on this.
Please.
I mean, what I'm sensing is that, we've got a ordinance out there already for peddlers and street vendors, right? So that addresses some of these, right, Dan?
Well, yeah, but this was going to...
Until June, right?
Okay.
Right?
So...
Until their licenses expire, and I sent you guys a spreadsheet back in March that shows they expire all through the summer.
Yep.
This was going to...
Starting in June.
But I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is if somebody wanted to sell picture frames out of a cart and push it up and down 9 Mile, they could do that right now with the license, and we've got 0 takers on that. Or bead salesmen, or the Fuller Brush people, or whatever.
They could be out there right now under the existing peddlers.
And it's been out there for years, and no one's ever approached us to sell
I haven't seen many.
beads or whatever. So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, and certainly this is my opinion, is that we should at least marginally reduce the fees and, relatively dramatically increase the hours. I mean, if we double it, that's a 100% increase. But I'd like to see 2, 3, 4 days. I don't know what the right number is, and I'd like to see the fees come down. And I'm not sure I'm that worried about the distinction between the goods and the food, but that's where I am.
I concur with Scott, although other than the goods and the food, I would like it to be restricted to the food.
I hear you, Scott, and I support everything you say, but if there's a way to reduce some of the concerns by the brick and mortar businesses who do have that concern, let's just get it done and put it in there.
I agree.
Which would be one.
And you want to preserve the way the ordinance reads right now as to the location being restricted to the pedestrian alley for sidewalk vending and to the city hall lot with respect to mobile vending, which, right, correct?
Yes. Through the chair?
Yes, sir.
April, do you think you get this done in 2 weeks?
No, because I don't know staff, I don't think, because we went to the DDA to get their recommendations. So I
Right.
don't feel that, I mean, unless council helps us to understand where we need to go, I'm just afraid we're going to be back here again in 2 weeks. So, I mean, if you want to help us with some more parameters, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I just don't, we have got, I don't know.
Well, we don't know where else to go.
All right, well, the parameter that I heard was at least a 25% reduction and an increase to 2 to 3 days. So if we send it back to them, why aren't we just approving that tonight?
Why don't we just approve it tonight? I'd say start off with 3 days and 25% reduction.
That brings us to what?
Tuesday,
3 days with what hours?
I mean,
10 to 6.
That's part of the issue for me is I don't know what day to pick. It feels very arbitrary. It just feels very, I don't know what would make sense. I would like some input from them in terms of when that might be.
Well, the DDA gave you their rationales for Tuesdays for the trucks and Thursdays for the sidewalk vendors. I think you're hearing from some of the vendors that something more towards the weekend is better for them.
Mm-hmm.
Christina, do you have a recommendation to increase which days you would pick based on?
We have her recommendation, and I appreciate the work that they've done.
Well, if we send it back
So-
to her, then we would be asking for pick the days.
I think that.
We could either do it here or we could, yeah.
Throw some out there.
I guess what, let me throw out another suggestion then, that I and a volunteer member of council act, and I see Dan Martin raising his hand, as a liaison committee of the council to work with the DDA and the city administration over the next 2 weeks and come back with, we'll put ourselves in the middle of this, Dan, and come back with a recommendation. That's just a suggestion.
I like that because it ends this agenda item. But really, I mean, I think we have the capacity to make a decision up here, and I'd say Monday through Thursday, 10 to 5, and reduce the fees to $400 a license fee for the trucks, and a $200 license fee for the push carts. See how that goes. If it's untenable, then we'll change it.
10 to what would you have?
10 to 5, I don't know.
For the mobile?
For both of them. And then let them open up after midnight if they want to come back.
I agree with the mayor in terms of having the council liaison. It's clear that council has a different take on the policy direction for this ordinance, as well as the fees. And so if we can have someone represent us with the DDA and the city staff, that would be good to come up with these hours rather than us arbitrarily picking them up here without having consensus.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't view it as throwing it back to the DDA when we can kind of liaison and collaborate.
Well, that's what I meant.
in other weeks.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
Real quick, through the chair, Dan, if we were to decide to have Dan and Dave hash this out, are we within our parameters under the governing rules to email our suggestions to these guys individually?
Well, individually, you can provide communication to the mayor
or CC everybody else.
But it would be coming back to council.
Correct.
Yeah, that's coming to
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may make one other suggestion, there is absolutely no argument about ordinance number 1121, so perhaps we could pass that today. So I'll make a motion if.
Well,
I want to close the other issue first, and then this is on the same agenda item. That's the only reason I bring it up.
Oh.
That's the
Oh, yeah.
door-to-door.
Canvassing and solicitations.
Well, you're correct. There is, I haven't heard any discussion on that.
Not in the past 6 weeks, no.
So we might as well pair a third of this off, right?
That would be awesome.
All right.
I had a call today, someone wanting a license, and I asked them to call back tomorrow, so.
There you go. All right, I'd like to move that we adopt ordinance number 1121, an ordinance to amend Chapter 7, Business Regulations and Licenses, Article 13, canvassing and solicitations of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances as submitted.
Support.
Is there discussion? I'm only going to say this. The ordinance, which I'm happy to hear, says that handbills, flyers, and advertising shall only be left at the front door of the property. Somebody is in my neighborhood for the last 3 weeks leaving things at the curb, which eventually, when the wind starts blowing, means they're all over the street. And I know we're on it. I've talked to Derek about it. But if you're listening out there, front door only for items like that.
And only where it is not posted, no soliciting.
That's correct. All right, so that was moved by Martin. Was there a second?
Yes. Yes.
By Piana. Is there further discussion on that motion?
I hope not.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That ordinance passes. Back on the main item, however, I'm not sure that I've heard consensus on how we want to move forward. There's a couple of suggestions.
I don't think we need a motion, correct? We just move forward with the recommendation that Mayor Coulter and myself work with the DDA and the stakeholders to come back with a final resolution in 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Well,
Do we,
it could
well,
die for lack of
table-
support, and
Right.
I guess you guys could act in that way, or
Do you want, should we make a motion?
I think it probably provides better clarity and consensus with council.
All right, I would move then that myself and Mayor Coulter work with the DDA and stakeholders to craft recommended changes in ordinance numbers 1119 and 1120 to be presented at the next city council meeting.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Piana. Further discussion? But, all right, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Galloway?
No, with explanation.
Lennon is absent. Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Mayor Coulter?
Yes.
And my explanation is, it's not that I don't think the two of you are competent and capable of moving this thing forward. I just don't see why we as a body can't make some decision up here on what days we're going to allow a hot dog cart to push around in the streets. I don't think this is a matter of life and death, truly, for any of our businesses. I think we could have crafted something up here at the table that would have worked and, started opening this business opportunity up for people.
Point taken. Next item of business would be E, consideration to adopt resolutions designating specific public spaces for vending in the downtown vending district
Might as well table that one.
and setting fees pursuant to Chapter 7 Business Regulations of the Ferndale Code of Ordinance. So this does specifically address the fees, so I'm guessing we probably want to make a similar motion. Councilman Martin?
I would move that that myself and Mayor Coulter work with DDA and key stakeholders to craft or to amend the proposed resolutions or ordinances to be brought back at the next council meetings with recommendations.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Lennon. Any further discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. That motion is adopted. Now on to item, this will be 7F, but was formerly consent agenda item C. And Dan Christ, you removed that from the consent agenda item. Consent agenda, do you want to
I
introduce
did,
that?
Your Honor. There are two proposed contracts that are set forth in that agenda item, one for the removal of the existing bullet trap and one for new installation of a new one. The proposed contract submitted by the two contractors had certain terms that I suggest aren't favorable to the city. I would suggest that either council consider a motion approving it contingent upon my negotiation of acceptable terms with respect to the revision of that contract, or alternatively, to table this to council's next agenda for consideration at that time.
So there's some modifications that Dan is suggesting, and the two alternatives would be you can either pass this tonight with the understanding that he will make these and have them approved and signed by me, or bringing them back in 2 weeks if you'd like to see them.
Well, either or, this has come back to us in 2 weeks, or we could approve it tonight.
It would be approved contingent upon acceptable language being negotiated. I don't believe in discussing the matter with the chief that there's a time crisis if council wished to bring it back in 2 weeks. Is that?
Chief.
That's correct, Your Honor. Just as an ease of, it seems like the contract language will probably be resolved, so it would be, if there is no problem with the actual motion for the work, then it would be easier just to go that route. And if we did have conflict with the language, then we actually would have to come back here.
And that's the thing. If there was conflict all of a sudden with the language, I would say I'm not comfortable with it. I'll bring it back to you.
Absolutely.
Folks. I would only sign it if it looked like it was, everybody was in agreement that the boilerplate language was too restrictive to the city. So that would probably be the easiest way to go, but it's council's pleasure. But I would need a motion.
I move to authorize the police department to renovate the bullet trap in the shooting range and enter into contract with revisions provided by the city lawyer with Monarch and approved by the mayor with Monarch Environmental in the amount of $4,700 for the demolition and removal of the existing trap, and Action Target for the installation of the new bullet trap in the amount of $36,400. Total amount for the project, $41,100 from drug forfeiture account 265-000-977, and to increase the drug forfeiture capital budget by the same amount.
Second.
Moved by Piana and seconded by Martin. Any further discussion on that item? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmembers Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Which brings us to call to council. I see Byron from DPW. Anything further for the good of the city this week, Byron?
I know I've said this before, but Couples begins in 2 weeks at Southwest Storage Yard, May 5th. And just bring your pickup trucks and or cans or whatever you want to bring, and we'll load you up.
Excellent. Thank you. Good information. Jill, anything from the Recreation Department this evening?
Good evening. We have two special events coming up in the beginning of May. On Saturday, May 5th, is our Mother-Son Mother's Day party at the Kulik Center from 4 to 7. Participants will enjoy various games, activities. We're going to have a magic show and some light refreshments. And registration is available on our website, ferndalerecreation.org. Coming up on Saturday, May 12th, we are teaming up with the high school girls varsity soccer team for our first annual Soccer-Rama. All of our regularly scheduled youth soccer games for that day will be played at the high school. We're going to have a bounce house. We're going to have concessions open. The girls varsity team will be on site they're going to run a couple mini clinics for our players and also be warming up all of our players before their games. So we're very excited about partnering with them and hoping that this will be something to continue from season to season. And that's it.
Thank you. Chief Collins?
I do have a couple of things for council this evening. Thank you. First off, Friday there was a very short, very non-intense lockdown at Ferndale High School. This event lasted about 10 minutes. It actually involved a young man with a gun that had confrontation with his mother in Royal Oak Township. Notifications were made through the state police who had just come on duty. We did assist, but you did not get notified of the lockdown because it can go through our system. We are working on that with the state police, and we feel that in the future that type of notification will go out through our IRIS system, but a couple of bugs we hadn't quite worked out on that one yet. So any apology, I give apologies to anybody that didn't get notified of that because it didn't come, we did not make that notification. Second thing is that I would like to present
Some light reading? Some light reading?
Some light reading. This is the 2011 Ferndale Police Department annual report. Once presented to you, we will also post it on our website. So I'd like to give that to you now.
Thank you very much. You know, I read these cover to cover every year.
She got pictures of Kojak in there.
I get a report, but not a mug.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Is that your last item there, Chief? Oh, all right.
Thank you. You should say that for the end. Beer glass, is that in here?
Yeah.
For the lunch?
I really like my hoodie from 2 years ago.
You got a hoodie? I didn't get a hoodie.
Hey, who got a hoodie?
Oops, sorry.
You got a hoodie?
And lastly, on a more fun note, as you all have been involved with this before, and I will let you know that I am the conduit for the Ferndale High School football team Moo-Poo extravaganza yet again, where you can purchase a portion of the football field, and in early June we'll be putting a cow on said football field, and if the cow poos on your little plot of land, you can win $1,000. So anybody that's interested, you can see many of the football players, the athletic department, or myself, and my kids will be very happy.
How much is a poop square?
It's a $10 square, and
April, are you familiar? See, you're new to the town. Have you heard this?
I have not heard yet.
This is
oh yeah,
great.
it's an annual event. It actually what it does is it allows our varsity players to go during what everybody's referred to as two-a-days. We send our kids that many times haven't been out of this general area. We send them up north for their high-intense football training. And this year we're actually adding the younger classes to. They're going to have a lock-in one at the high school, so we're expanding it. So it's really a cool thing for a good guy, and it's a lot of fun. You can come out and watch a cow poop if you're interested.
I just have to ask how that concept even happened.
I really don't know. I kind of inherited.
Balance that well.
I kind of inherited this one, but it has been. This is probably about the 10th year we've done it. So
Thanks.
it's a lot of
Thank
fun.
you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, you're back.
Appreciate it, Chief. I'm back. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Chief Sullivan, anything from the fire department this evening?
Mr. Mayor, Council, just to bring you up to speed, we had the Fire Breathing Dragon event in Pleasant Ridge for the Friends of the Ferndale Public Library, and it worked fine, even though it was a rainy day. About 50 to 60 people showed up, and I think Channel 7 was there. Keith, the artist, was very cooperative and bought new gas equipment so that it made it completely safe to set off on a pyrotechnic device in a public venue. So that went off very well. We did have a fire over the weekend in the township, and it looks suspicious at this point, so somebody's lighting abandoned houses on fire. So if anyone sees people hanging around abandoned houses in the city of Ferndale, it'd be good to call the police department right away, because it looks like we have a fire bug loose. And they're fairly well versed at setting these things, so had we not got there in the time we did by Oakland County Sheriff pulling up on smoke coming out of the building, it would have probably been a total destruction of the building. Luckily, the house was far enough away from any other houses that was not occupied, but others right next door were. It could have got many things going, but we nailed that pretty quick. And that's about it. CERT's about almost halfway through with their training and really getting fired up every time the wind blows or something happens. I'm getting a lot more calls like, are we going? Are we going? So the energy is building, as Councilman Martin could attest to it. He's one of our training victims now that his wife's involved. So we're looking forward to it. And at the end, we'll be having a area-wide disaster drill. So we'll try and invite other agencies in that end so we can test the CERT skills in that and prepare for emergency preparedness. We're also entering into the IRA system as the police department did, and that's what we'll use to notify fire commanders on daily routine stuff through a push system from the Clemis FRMS, and then notify the CERTs if we do need to call them up. That'll be how we're notifying them, as well as you, should we be going to emergency management mode. That's it. Questions?
Good stuff. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Sherilyn, anything from the clerk's office this evening?
Yes, just want to let you know that the Oakland County Elections Division this week is updating the state qualified voter system, redrawing our districts and our precincts, so that is underway, and so we will be able to get notification out and start doing some educating of our registered voters on their new precincts as well as their new commission and other districts.
Good deal. Thank you. City Manager, April McGrath.
A couple things. In your packet was a letter regarding the Economic Vitality Incentive Program. It's the third component of three to comply with state shared revenue. Bottom line is this was the most nebulous, I guess, of all requirements, where basically we had to issue an intent to move forward in a manner that starts to reduce employee compensation. I'm pleased to report that there's a lot of things in place that they are requiring that we're already doing, including one of the big ones is that the majority of our units are already in a defined contribution, and that's one of the things that they'd like to have people reduce or have cities reduce. So that's just one of many, but it really is just, it's a letter of intent. It's a very unique question that they're asking. There's no formal plan of action or whatnot, but it's just that you intend to comply. Now, that's this year. Next year, it could change and be a little more strict, or they may change the requirements. If you recall, the first requirement was the Munitrix system that we put, it was called the dashboard on our website, which the intent for that is to ensure that our residents have a better understanding of how we spend our dollars and where we spend our dollars. The second one was the larger report on consolidation, where we had to create a report on all of the things that we are currently collaborating on and any future possibilities for shared services. And again, this was the third. So we are entering that into the record and putting it on our website, and that will be mailed to the state this week. And now we have complied with all three sections of that to ensure that we receive about $850,000. Again, we're curious for next year. As far as I have heard, it's remaining somewhat the same, the requirements, but that's to remain to be seen. So we'll keep you updated on that. A friendly reminder that we have another budget meeting, a special work session on Monday, April 30th from 5:30 to 9:30. Right. We will be going over the non-general fund. That will be focused on the non-general fund, as well as follow up with any other general fund questions that you might have, and moving forward with beginning the discussions on the direction for the budget as May 7th it needs to be adopted. And I would also like to announce and congratulate Jill Manchik, who is now our Recreation Director. She comes to us with a great experience in recreation from Central, and also a degree from Central Michigan University, as well as some certifications in the recreation field, and experience in recreation not only here but back in Florida as well. So we are very excited to have her on board and looking forward to new and exciting programs at the Recreation Department. So, congratulations. And that's all I have.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Just one item, Your Honor. Your first meeting of May is currently scheduled for the 14th, and discussing this, I understand you have a budget meeting on May 7th. The city manager inquired whether you could, council could consider having that particular May 7th meeting constitute your first regularly scheduled meeting of May, and you can, should you elect to adopt or resolve that the May 7th budget meeting constitute your first regularly scheduled meeting of May, if you wish to entertain such a motion.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Appreciate it very much. Councilman Martin?
I have a couple things. The Ferndale Community Foundation grant season is upon us. The grant applications are available on the website www.ferndaleCommunityFoundation.org. The grant deadline is May 18th. They can be returned either online or through the city manager's office. And this Wednesday at 7 p.m. is a question and answer session at Kulik Center for folks who may have questions specific to the application of the grants. This year, we're giving away up to $8,000. We're giving away in total $8,000, and each individual grant request may go up to $2,500. Secondly, also on Wednesday, just again 6 o'clock here in council chambers, is the group from West Troy and West Saratoga to talk about the pilot parking program. So I encourage all residents in that area to show up. And lastly, I just want to congratulate the FESC again. I went to several events for Earth Week, and I just thought they did a fantastic job this year. It was well represented, well attended, and nice week, nice event.
Thanks. Councilman Lennon.
I just want to say that applications for the David Lennon Memorial Scholarship Fund are now available at the high school. So if you have a son or daughter that's graduating, make sure you get an application, and there's a process you have to go through, but that has begun now, and those will be awarded, I think sometime in June at our golf outing. That's about it. I can talk a little bit about mobile vending if you like.
I think we've had enough tonight,
Okay,
Councilman.
that's it for me
Appreciate
from right now.
Thank you. Councilwoman Piana, anything this evening?
I just wanted to say that the the Ferndale Up put on organized by Matt Nowotzik is also the Ferndale Community Foundation is the host partner on this event, and so I'm really glad that we were able to be a supportive partner for that. And then I also wanted to kind of close out and say that when we take extra care to work on a new ordinance or revise an old ordinance, such as the noise issue that we spent a year on, I think it's really important to note, while it may be frustrating for many, that we do it because we want it to get it right the first time. And I think we can't forget that, because we don't want it. We truly don't want it to come back, even though we really say, you know, we have the opportunity. We really want to be able to let it flourish the first time and let it run. And so I guess that's kind of where I am tonight, after this lengthy discussion with yet another important issue to growing our downtown.
Thank you. Councilman Galloway.
Well, it occurred to me that it might be a good idea to make May 7th the first regularly scheduled, the May 7th budget meeting, our first regularly scheduled council meeting in May. So I would move that.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Galloway, supported by Martin. Is there any discussion on that item?
Brilliant thinking, Scott.
You can't put anything past him. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted.
Just a couple other items. It was a busy weekend in Ferndale for the end of Green Week and the Books and Roses at the library. With the Ferndale Bicycle Shop hosted the Sierra Club Green Cruise. Kicked off at Saturday morning on the 21st. A little chilly ride up to Birmingham and back, but it was well attended, about somewhere between 30 and 50 people. So the same route is going to be a ride in August, the Green Cruise, August 11th. Should be a little warmer. Encourage folks to get out. There's also a family ride component. So there was, looked like about a 3-year-old trying to get out on our 25-mile ride, and that didn't last too long, but he would be more than welcome at the family ride in August. Also on Saturday, the Drayton Avenue Cooperative Preschool, 62-year-old cooperative preschool at Drayton Avenue Presbyterian Church had their annual silent auction fundraiser. It was well attended, really well attended actually. A lot of support from local businesses, and some of the most popular items were from our Green Business of the Year, Green Thumb, I don't know, Green Thumb what? Nursery? Right? Green Thumb Gardening Center? I don't know what it was, but the wheelbarrow and rain bucket or rain barrel were very popular. And that's it.
Excellent, thanks. I have just a couple of quick things tonight. Next week, May 3rd, is the Fern Care Annual Dinner. I get to be the Master of Ceremonies for that. Looking forward to it. It's their biggest fundraising event of the year. It's at the Ukrainian Center in Warren. If you haven't got your ticket, go to the Fern Care website or their Facebook page, and you can find out more information about that. Secondly, we got a wonderful award, as I'll hold for the cameras, from the Arbor Day Foundation. We are a Tree City USA for 10 straight years. Very proud of that. And with that, I have nothing else. This meeting is adjourned.